Flight attendants of Reddit, what's your most NSFW story? Not a flight attendant but my friend is. She says that an entire red-eye flight full of morning wood is pretty entertaining. My mom was telling me how a woman died from a stroke on her flight and wasn't discovered until several hours later. Her partner was next to her. Source: Mom is Purser for Big Airline. Edit: Stop questioning my mom's undeniable power in relation to aircrafts. Obligatory not a flight attendant, but work in the industry and married to a former FA. All the stories you hear about pilots and DEFers hooking up. Sometimes in the cockpit, jiggity. But usually on a layover, heh. They're all true. Especially at the smaller regional airlines in the US. Think American Eagle, Delta Connection, United Express. Yes. Even the married ones. That out of the way. The worst thing I ever witnessed was the aftermath of someone dying on a flight. This older lady with advanced lung cancer was flying out west to live out her final days. Well, she literally coughed up a lung on this flight. The plane diverted and then flew empty back to base to be cleaned. I went to see if the stories were true. They were. Blood was everywhere. At least one of the flight attendants was on light duty for 6 months because of the psychological trauma. Once I saw a girl giving a hand job to her boyfriend under a blanket. You could see what she was doing pretty clearly, but they just didn't care. This was in business class. Reverse story. I was on a long overseas flight and put a blanket over my lap to sleep. I had my hands clasped together under the blanket in my lap. I was woken up by a flight attendant to ask me what I was doing with a wink in her eye. Having just woken up, I was confused. But she peeled back the blanket too. Obviously nothing. We kinda just looked at each other. Paused. And she handed my blanket back. I'm not sure if she wanted me to take her lead or what. Anyway. I drifted back to sleep in a few minutes and that was that. Maybe I furiously masturbate in my sleep and have no idea. I once had a flight attendant open the bathroom door on me. I was laying a log and was 11 years old. I work for the airlines and one of our flights served lunch just after takeoff and one of the passengers asked, why is my quinoa moving? Turns out the salad served unfortunately came with complimentary maggots. All the food served was taken back and nobody ate for the remainder of the 8-hour flight. Surprised this didn't make the news. Can't speak of flight attendants but I've worked with many pilots in a previous job. I see cheating popping up a few times on here and I just wanted to verify that yeah, it does happen a lot. And this is just based off the crap they told me. First-hand experiences. Second-hand experiences. Walking in on so and so. I mean the entire range. Pilots would frequently pool money together and buy a condo, house, or apartment in a city they frequently have layovers in and put a few beds or bunk beds in there and some furnishings. They call it a crash pad and it's so they have some semblance of home while away from home. The most common thing I've heard were pilots walking in on other pilots plus flight attendants or married pilots plus some chick they met somewhere. Pilots kind of clump up in the extremes more than other people. You have a ton of pilots that are super straight edge and will never ever do anything bad. Then you have a bunch that are pretty much the worst people you would ever meet. The vast majority of pilots in the US are former military pilots and making the cut is very rigorous, so you're going to find the majority of those that did are either the super straight arrows and the win at all costs types. Flight attendant here. Caught a guy peeing on a family. Had to call an emergency landing. Guy later admitted to being high on pills and thought he was in a lavatory. Had no recollection of doing what he did. My great uncle was married to Far and she was cheating on him with a pilot. He found out. Took a gun and shot and killed the pilot in the airport bathroom. Did some time in a federal prison, but the crazy part was the judge literally told him he couldn't condone murder but he would have done the same if it was his wife. It was the 60s or 70s. This isn't about passengers, it's about a pilot. I'll make the story short. We were out on an overnight getting drinks, many drinks. He keeps trying to tell me and the other Far about all the Fars that he's bedding. And how his wife found out but she is still with him. you. So he's trying to tell us this and show us photos of him and these women in intimate positions, and I'm disgusted. Of course. He doesn't like me and my reactions. Somehow. That led to him exposing himself to us 3 times that night. After we said no. Don't do that. This guy is one of those rare few that give pilots a bad name. I don't hesitate to tell everyone about him and to avoid him. Edit. Yes. I should have reported him. Here's what stopped me. The next day he told me that I had punched him in the balls and said, "Don't touch me." I don't remember this, but if it's true, I'll probably end up the one in trouble because FARs are more replaceable than pilots. Had a couple switch seats in the back part of the plane during boarding to be able to sit together. Later we found them in the lab together. I think she was giving him head. One of the other FARs working the flight said, "Wait, that's not her husband." She came on with a different guy. Turns out her husband was sitting in the front of the plane. Totally oblivious. Edit. Since a ton of people are wondering how we knew it was her husband. They boarded the flight together and the front flight attendants could tell they were together. After the lavhead incident, we were doing beverage service and I asked the guy, "Oh, is that blonde lady back there your wife?" She was saying, "You got split up." That's too bad. After the flight, he waited at the bottom of the outdoor ramp until she got off the plane. And we watched them walk into the airport together.